All right. Bearing, you did a fantastic stream with that guy, Tim Demotivator Opinions. Um, and this is actually directed to people who are on Tim's end of politics, because this is actually very important. Um, I was on the left, was quite like you, Tim. I would spit a lot of shit and then like curl up in a ball of sorts. Why are you so unfair? Why are you so uncharitable? After I said something kind of ugly, or just went along with ugly ass people. You see, but then I'm not on their team. See, they're individuals doing something, see, you're not in the collective when you want to. This is very important about your whole end of politics, the entirety. You're not individualists. You are collectivists. You believe in a collective, you just don't have one, because there isn't really one that exists. You were born into one. It was called your family. You were born in a geographical area. That would be like your state or the nation you are in, say the ethno-nation. But you can't conceive of this. You don't believe in things like that. You have some high conceptual concept that goes above what's called reality. And in most of the world, people live in the real world. They don't have the privilege of getting to paint their nails so people know you don't do anything with your hands. I hate that. I hate when men do that. I really do. Never looks good. It just never does. It's one of those fashion statements that really is like, look, I've done something very strange and nothing more. It's not even like long hair, where you just let it grow. Well, I mean, that at least could look good, but anyway, your entire side of politics, what has been called the left, the liberals, we on the right have noticed this thing that we call the Overton window. You probably are somewhat familiar with this language. You probably hear it a lot on YouTube. If not, look up the Overton window. Well, the whole thing about this is your side is the politically violent. You are violent because of politics. Throughout the history of the left and the liberals, whether it's the French Revolution, whether it was various things in Britain along these lines, the National Socialists, Spain between World War I and World War II, the political violence. You all historically have beaten almost any and every religious or monarchical ethno-state kind of army. You've beaten them all. The Russian Soviets, Maoist China, I mean, the killing fields, that's all your team. This idea that the collective has some new crazy idea and everybody in the countryside must go along with this idea. And if not, you will solve that problem. Well, you won't. See, people like you don't make it to that point. People like you get done like the Trotskyites. Somewhere, comrade, your name's on the list of guys who are way scarier and into the left. That's what I figured out about the left. People like me were eventually probably going to be the cleanup squad. Us very disciplined leftists. And it was somebody on the right who really made me see this. He said, no, you all have always been the violence of the last 100 to 200 years. This is why the Catholic Church has always had this problem with revolutionary theology, because the revolution always goes wrong and kills the peasants. An example of this would be the Vendée massacre, when the French Revolution showed what it really was. That's why we talk about Robespierre the way we talk about him. But nobody ever talks about the Vendée. See, they don't talk about the victims. They talk about the horsemen. They talk about the revolutionary. We talk about Che. We don't talk about Che's victims. Che particularly liked seeing children executed and tortured. He liked knowing that they watched their family die and then killed them. He really was into it. Had a whole wall removed so he could watch executions more clearly. That's always been your side. It isn't that science has words for things. No, you disagree with them, and you know better than science, even though you just told Bering that you really don't know anything about biology. You don't understand the fundamental that humans are absolutely a binary species. That we have a word called hermaphrodite, and like it's some unbelievably high percentage of the time a hermaphrodite simply can't reproduce. And this really is like a 200 level class. I mean, this is stuff that came up in my Catholic school when I was a boy in the family life program. How fundamentally, obviously, you're totally and completely incorrect. You're trying to say something like water is not H2O. It's like H5O, and then you add something. It could be, water could be, well, woulda, coulda, shoulda. None of that will ever matter. And all of you on the left that keep thinking that you could just make things up about what's well-known research done on, like, oh yes, the brain performs in this manner among people who have a proclivity towards sex with the same gender, same sex. They're interchangeable words. They actually are interchangeable words, because sex is the relatively inaccurate word. Gender is the one that you end up finding used in biology. Sex really is referring to the organs, and that's why it's kind of a weird word to use, because different species do have variances on sex organs at different stages of how they reproduce. Say trees are a good example of this. You all want to mess with scientific definitions. And it's very important that you all curl up in a ball. No, I'm trying to not be in a box. I'm trying to be free and have a freer mind. No. You want to alter the definitions of words. That is a part of the revolution. The revolution has to work that way. That's how all revolutions have worked. They have to alter the way words are understood. This is why it was very interesting, your use of the word charity. I did like that the way you used that. You used it in the classical use of charity. You didn't use tolerance, which is often interchanged with charity, because they're not the same thing. Tolerance is what you tolerate. That is pain. Charity is you being just to another, even though they're like you, Tim, like a reject. And that's really one of the things also about the right. The right is a tiered world because the world is tiered. There is a pecking order in the world. We have shown this to be true as humans by decimating almost everything that preys on us, down to the insect level. Doesn't matter. It just simply doesn't matter if that makes your dick shrink. It's that's the way it is. You live, was it in Australia? Oh my God. If they didn't tame that environment, something like you wouldn't survive very long, Tim. Oh my boy. It's like, I mean, of all places, Australia, I think about something like Tim fighting off the various fascinating animals of Australia. But you guys on the left, you're going to have to understand your brain doesn't work quite correctly. You don't observe science. You use, this is a classical way, observantia versus interest. that observing a phenomena is observing it and looking at it from as many facets as possible. But it just takes a long time. That is why we have a thing called tradition, wisdom, cultural memory, but you guys on the left call it ancient bigotries, if I remember correctly. Old-fashioned thinking. It's the box that your thinking is trapped in. Because you see, your thinking is interest. You see a phenomena and you want something. And you can't admit that. That's the key. You can't admit your fundamental desire, craving. Is it dukkha, I believe, if it's put in Buddhism. But the best way I've ever heard it put in Christian terms, in the Christian psyche, Christian Aristotelianism, sees it as anxiety. And to assuage the anxiety, we tend to desire. It's just the way we are, as a creature, the way we are. We see it with dogs. Dogs are, we've adapted dogs to our behavior, and they've adapted us a bit, but mostly we've made them act as we wish. But they reflect that. They get anxious. They desire your love. That's the beauty of a family. That's the beauty of having friends. You see, you are anxious, and they give you something back. YouTube kind of is a way of doing this. This is really something we're evolving. A way of assuaging our anxiety. It flickers like a fire. The internet screen, the computer screen. But words come out of it. Stories from our friends. We could watch people who we don't know but we feel close to because we could see the emotions on their face. We could hear the way they are emoting with their voice, the way they gesticulate, the way our bodies move. You feel close to them. It's a beautiful thing, technology. And it's very, very hard for some people because they are in a box. They are in the box of their self-interest. That if the world would wrap itself around really their beliefs, their ethics, what a world it would be. But it's a world that is shattered and incomplete, and only somebody like you who could point out the forces that are rocks in the river, that thing that's upsetting the flow, that kink in the chain. And that if you could just suggest, if you just work it out, you just somehow find a way around that rock, maybe just drown it under more water. That's the issue that comes up for the leftist era after era after era. And this has been going for about 300 years. Since the fall of the monarchs of Europe, one by one by one. Now there's only so many left. Nobody looks at them as maybe the cause of all that, because they're very rational, reasonable people, very tolerant. In their nations, only the white women get raped by Muslims. Well, this is the thing. A lot of us have looked at what we had in our cultural memories, our wisdom. We're looking at you with your painted nails, Timmy. We're thinking, he wouldn't live very long in that outback without a whole lot of civilization and a whole lot of help. What the fuck do you even know about men and women, really? Because what kind of man really are you? You don't seem to be a very gritty fellow. And then when you admit that you don't really even understand genomics, or you don't really understand what is this freezing? No. What you're talking about. That's just unacceptable. But that is the issue with the left. You have been deemed throughout the first world as an unacceptable movement because you won't deal with reality as it is. And now you're all done. And there's nothing you can do about it because your brain is really broken. You simply will not deal with tiers, humans being the height of creation, the import of men and women being what they are and being different and understood to being so. And really, a big part of this that's really a trouble is that you won't admit to that deep sense of craving that even the Buddha talked about. The evil inclination, as Isaiah talked about, that is built into the world. You can't believe these things because that would then fit you into a box called humanity, and you're better than us.